Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Culture Cast. I'm Chris Dashu, and I'm joined by my good friend, the host of the Wake Up Heavy podcast. You have heard him on here before, though not talking about a film that's as serious as this one. My good friend, Mark Begley.
I never lie.
Oh, boy. Yeah, me either. Well, the tagline for this movie is a good one. The closer you look, the less you want to know. Sure, why not? We're going to be talking about yet another noir film. We're going to be talking about 1990's The Kill-Off. So, The Kill-Off is directed by Maggie Greenwald. It is based off of the book of the same name by Jim Thompson. It stars a bunch of folks that I have never heard of before. Loretta Gross, Andrew Lee Barrett, Jackson Sims, Steve Monroe. So the film is set in a small coastal town in New Jersey where there is a nightclub. Seemingly the nightclub is the only thing in town. And there's a stripper, and there's a guy who rapes his daughter, and there's a guy who's married to a woman who's like 30 years older than him. It's weird. It's weird. There's a lot of weird characters. Again, Cullen usurping the narrative I was expecting once again with noir films and going completely off the grid. So much so that this movie is goddamn near impossible to find. But we'll get to that when we get to it. So, Mark, I know that neither one of us had ever seen this film before. We didn't get a chance to read the novel, unfortunately. But I'm curious, what did you think of watching The Kill-Off for your first time?
It took me a little bit of maybe 15, 20 minutes before I kind of started to get into it. And I think part of that was just simply due to the transfer that I was watching. I initially started watching one that was on YouTube, which was an obvious VHS rip. And it was really, really dark. And I was getting really confused as to who was who and who was married to who or connected to who. And once I restarted it with the slightly better version that Cullen sent over, it clicked a little better, and I was able to sit and enjoy it. And it is an intro. I don't even know if I had seen this without knowing you were doing this for Noir Month. I don't even know if it would have registered in my head that it was noir or neo-noir.
Yeah, I'm honestly right there with you. So, like the rest of the films this month, this film is not what I was expecting at all when it comes to noir. Frankly, like you just said, Mark, I'm not sure I would really consider this noir. And I may, when Cullen's on the episode next week, I may take him to task over it. Because it's like, it reminds me of another film that I am a huge fan of, that is based off of a stage play, Killer Joe. And that film has this same weird hillbilly redneck shit. I mean, look, I couldn't even tell you that this was set in New Jersey. This feels like it's set in some small town in Louisiana or Texas. I mean, if not for the fact that they don't have Southern accents, you couldn't have convinced me this takes place in New Jersey, right?
Yeah, I think the only reason I really knew that was just from reading the IMDb and Wikipedia pages about it, that it takes place in a small, I figured, okay, it's shore. I see the ocean or possibly a large lake. It could be anywhere USA as far as I'm concerned. Real rundown town. And I guess in the book, it's there's an amusement park, and it's basically abandoned now. So that big source of income for the town is gone, which I don't know that that's even touched on in the movie. They may have shown amusement park scenes that I just couldn't see because the movie is so dark, but not that it plays that big of a role in the film, but those kind of things like amusement park, abandoned amusement parks or these towns that have died off that were maybe big gambling towns or something like that. That's kind of a noirish little glint for the movie.
Yeah, and the story is, having done a little research about the story does seem a lot different in the book than in the film. And some of the kind of criticism for the film that I read was that the film cuts down some of the more interweaving plot points from the book. And look, I mean, I'm not sure I would have missed them. The story was rather straightforward either way. I'm not sure how much more intrigue they could have added. That's kind of one of my issues with this film is I don't find the story that they're telling particularly compelling. It's just kind of, why do I care that this guy is married to this old woman who's maybe a hypochondriac? She is in the book, but in the movie they don't even address it. I don't know.
Yeah, that was the thing that kind of bothered me about the overall story was, who am I supposed to care about here? Obviously, I'm not going to care about Luann because she's awful and spreading gossip while laying in bed 24 hours a day and telling stories about everybody else in town, or the 5 or 6 other people that we see in the movie.
The most barren town I've ever seen in a film.
Yeah,
you couldn't convince me there's actually anyone else who lives here.
Yeah, that was the other thing too. It was like there's 6 characters, and then one scene during the striptease, and where there are some extras, and that was about it. It's these, and I don't mind movies like that stick to 5 or 6 characters throughout. But yeah, that interweaving thing, their lives do connect, all of them, at some point. How much more interweaving could there be between them? I mean, I guess we could find a connection between Danny Lee, the stripper, and Bobby, the drug-dealing doctor's son, and maybe Myra and this, the bar owner's daughter and this person, but they all connect in the movie in some way or another, either through Luann's phone calls or through the bar itself where most of the action takes place. So I'm curious to kind of know what else is missing, what other kind of connections, if it's just additional characters or if it's, just even more incestuous, to use that term, which does come up in the film. If everybody is in with everybody else.
I guess it's convenient that there's only like 4 characters then.
Yeah, and like I said, the thing that this reminded me of a lot was Blood Simple, and I just kept thinking about that, and I don't know if it was because of the bar or because that movie also only has about 5 main characters. The stories are very different, but it was, that's more about the main character's infidelity. There's infidelity in this as well, but it's something that Luann and her much younger husband seem to have an agreement about, at least up to a point, which is kind of an interesting thing, that she enjoys hearing about his trysts with younger women. But when he starts to hide it from her, that's sort of what sets her off ultimately at the end. And so there's infidelity, there's incest that's brought up a couple of times, which is, that's a very noir type of scenario. Right. And usually in those 50s films, it was always just kind of, hinted at and winked about. And I believe, and it's been a long time since I've seen The Grifters, I was hoping to catch it before doing this, but if I'm not mistaken, that deals with incest as well. And that's another Jim Thompson, based on another Jim Thompson novel. If I'm not mistaken, and I could be, it's probably been at least 20 years since I watched that last, that John Cusack and Angelica Houston are mother and son. And whether they realize it or not, I don't remember. I should have watched it before talking about this, but incest seems to come up a lot in those movies and books.
So I've never seen any other Jim Thompson adaptations. And Jim Thompson has not come up on the noir writers that I have read. So I don't have any frame of reference, but to your point, there are those noir-ish themes. But those noir-ish themes can be in anything, right? I mean, do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, there's usually some kind of weird sexual proclivity, whether it's incest or pedophilia or homosexuality and lesbianism was always kind of played around with in the old movies. Bad guys. The bad guys were always homosexual. It was used as kind of this underlying deviancy, and that's not in the Kill Off from what I recall.
No.
But definitely incest. Definitely, well, not definitely, but rape always kind of creeps into the picture in these. It's all the seedy stuff,
right?
the underworld, and even though this was made in 1989 and released in 90, it's still kind of skirted around a little bit more just through the gossip from Luann's mouth to, whoever she's talking to on the phone.
So what did you think of the performances, especially of Loretta Gross as Luann?
I actually thought her and her husband, Ralph, and I don't remember the actor's name, but I think they did a fairly good job. Some of the other actors, Pete, the bar owner, was sort of not all that convincing as a tough guy. And Bobby, the drug dealing scumbag doctor's son, his performance left a little to be desired in my mind. Oh, and did we mention that Georgia Fox is in this? I think it's her first role. And it took me a long time to recognize her again because of the dark print. And I was like, oh, I finally recognize a face. And she's from CSI and TV shows. And
so I didn't recognize her. And again, that goes to my, my bigger point of I didn't recognize anybody. Again, the print, like you said, the print doesn't help. I don't believe that there is a Blu-ray version. There's not even a DVD version of this film. So it is one of these semi-pseudo-lost pieces of media, right? I mean, it's, if not for the fact that it was on VHS and someone ripped it from a VHS, we would have no way to watch this.
Yeah, I'd be really curious to see a cleaned up print of this and to see if it makes any difference. Again, in my reading, the contemporary reviews for the film noted that it was dark. It was shot, in shadow, and a lot of times characters aren't very clear in the frame. And when you're watching a VHS rip, that just exacerbates that. And to the point of where you kind of start to tune out because you're looking for something to focus on, and you start to miss dialogue and maybe important plot points, and probably would have benefited me if I had been able to watch this multiple times before we recorded to pick up on some more subtle things.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it is a very rough version of the film. And look, most of the time it's, this would be just this is the version we're watching. No, this is the only version you can find. So this is an issue with this film. This is a unique problem with this film because this is the only way to watch it, is knowing someone who has a rip of it. But I'm not sure any rip is going to be better than the one that we had. And even if it was any better, does it really matter how much better it was?
Yeah, I would, and it's while I was watching it, I was thinking of one movie that I watched a handful of times with just the crappiest version that you could even imagine. The movie called Kathy's Curse. It's this Canucksploitation Exorcist ripoff that is just amazingly wonderful. The first 3 or 4 times I watched it, though, was this version that just looks like the film was processed in a vat of urine. It's just awful. And it finally got a Blu-ray treatment and was cleaned up, and it is a revelation to see the cleaned up version. So, I was kind of thinking, would that be the situation here, or would it be just a little less dark? Would it get the Kathy's Curse treatment, or just I can make out some faces now? And I would definitely watch a cleaned up version of this to see how different it is. I enjoyed it enough to I don't think I'd watch the same version again, but a cleaned up version I would be more than interested in seeing.
Yeah, I too would like to see it, because I genuinely believe some of my unenjoyment from this film is exactly what you just spoke to. And I'm not going to blame anyone else for that. That's just the way it goes sometimes. This is just what happens. That's just it. I mean, there's nothing to say. This film didn't come out on VHS until 2001.
Yeah, and
fuck, it wasn't out for 11 years on top of everything else.
And it's a movie, to that point that I had never heard of before. You laid out the schedule for these movies, and there are so many films with kill in the title. Killer's Kiss, The Killing. There's probably another movie called The Kill Off, and I thought, oh, I've probably seen this at some point on TCM. And then looking into it, I was like, oh, no, this doesn't sound familiar. And then when it started, I was like, oh, no, there's no way I ever saw this. And I don't know how you would have. I doubt very highly it had a very big release. All the reviews that I read, and again, most of those were just on IMDb, but they were mostly positive, even the ones that were quoted on the Wikipedia page from, actual film critics. So it just makes me think there's got to be a little bit something more there that's missing with such a crappy print.
Yeah, I mean, again, I didn't dislike this film. I think this film is just okay. I think it's good enough. I'm not sure it does more than maybe I don't know. At this point this month, I kind of expected this to be more than it is. And I think that's partially my fault and partially how good the last two films have been. Because the last two films have been really good. So good and so kind of genre kind of subverting that I was expecting the same thing from this. And it's just kind of a straightforward noir movie. Like, if you can admit it's noir, which I think we've already both agreed that the noir connection is... It's noir, all right, because I can't see what's going on, but I'm not sure that was the intention of the filmmaker. But
well, yeah, it does have those elements, but it doesn't have, I guess for me, what's missing is sort of a... not that every noir has a detective, but a MacGuffin or a... somebody looking for something. It's more, you get the side elements of most noirs, the seediness and the sexual perversions or whatever you want to call them. And it almost seems like a B story in taking the place of an A story. And where's the A story? Where's the crime, or where's the dead body? Where's the hidden jewels? There is money that somebody's looking for, but it's sort of only brought up a couple of times and ends up being, the climax of the film is over this $10,000. And it doesn't seem like it's important enough through the whole film. Like, not everybody's looking for the $10,000.
And the people that are looking for the $10,000 aren't particularly interesting characters. They're like the side characters.
Right. Yeah. And I who are the main characters? Is it Ralph and Luann? Is it Pete? Is it Rags the bartender? He was probably my favorite character, actually.
He was good. But again, to your question, who is the main character of this film? I guess... if I had to make a determination on my end, I would say it's Ralph. But also, the Ralph, like, the thing about this film that's maybe the worst thing about it, not only does it not give the characters anything interesting to do, or frankly anything interesting to say. Maggie Greenwald did not use almost any of Jim Thompson's dialogue, by the way. They don't even give... most of the stories, at least the main story, they don't give the main story a satisfying conclusion. They just don't tell you what happens to Ralph and Danny Lee. They just get away, I guess.
Yeah, that was the question that I was actually going to ask. Again, I very possibly could have watched the ending again, but I was like, wait a minute, did they just leave? Did they leave? Did somebody kill them? Were they killed?
No, they just disappeared. They just disappeared off screen.
Yeah, that's what I remembered, and then I thought, oh, maybe I missed something because it's dark or I zoned out or something. But I thought, no, that's right. They just left. They got to leave, which again is kind of anti-noir if you think about it. Usually the protagonist doesn't fare so well.
No, normally the protagonist is the one dying. Or at least getting some sort of comeuppance. I don't understand. I mean, what I don't understand about the film is why not give us a character to connect with? Why do you kind of spread the entire plot over the film as thinly as possible for whatever plot the film has, which I would contend is barely a plot? Because again, I don't know what the hell is going on other than the one character likes the stripper, but she's not a stripper. And he's married to a woman who is a gossiping bitch, and she has money. And that's the whole plot of the film.
Yeah, I thought more was going to come of her phone calls and gossip. I mean, I guess it does her in at the end, but not directly. You know, she doesn't make a call about the person that ends up, and I guess spoilers here, the person that ends up killing her. It's more about the money. I'm sure she's spread the rumor about Pete and his daughter Myra. And I believe there is a scene where I don't know if she's saying it over the phone or if she's telling somebody in person. Maybe she's telling Bobby, who for some reason is constantly popping into her house unannounced, that Pete raped Myra at some point when she was very young and he was drunk or something. And that could have been maybe handled a little differently. But, you know, really that first scene kind of sets up like, oh, all this shit is going to fall out because of these phone calls she makes. Because at the beginning, the woman that she's spreading a rumor about, again, about incest, that she's carrying her brother's baby, he goes off and this is unclear as well, whether it's the brother that shoots himself or this woman's husband. Somebody goes and shoots himself and then she hangs herself. And I thought, oh, okay, you know, all this fucked up shit's going to happen in this movie because of this lady. And that's not really the case. Everybody knows she's a gossip and spreads lies. And who would ever believe a person like that?
But yet everybody in the movie does.
Apparently. I mean, they keep telling her to stop spreading rumors. And it's to me, that's kind of like, why are any of you listening to her? How is it affecting your life, really? I mean, Bobby, you're a drug dealer, so what does rumors about you dealing drugs have to do with anything? Okay, you don't want Pete to find out that you've got Myra hooked on heroin. You know, you don't really need a gossip monger to figure this stuff out. You're doing it right in front of the guy's bar. He's going to figure it out.
Right.
So, you know, there could have been more impact with the calls. It could have been, again, the thing that keeps connecting these people.
Should be the woman in the bed. That's the whole idea of this movie, is the framing device of Luann is interjecting herself into everyone's business. That's the whole crux of this film.
Yeah, which, again, it just needed to be stronger. You needed to have this lie about Bobby told to Ralph, put them against, you know, really against each other, not just, oh, Bobby took my job. Well, you know, Bobby's getting Myra hooked on heroin. Well, he could then, I guess, blackmail Bobby and say, I'm going to tell Pete you got Myra hooked. You know, none of that plays out. They don't start working against each other. And maybe that's what's missing from the book. I don't know, having not read it.
Well, I would hope that the book has a lot more going on than this, because this would be an awfully boring book to read if it were written as kind of one note as this is.
Yeah, and I don't think I've read any. I know I recognize this time period, and this kind of hit before a lot of his books started getting adapted. But I do remember hearing his name, and I think a couple different friends of mine had different books of his, and I never read any of them as far as I can remember. And I've seen The Grifters, and it's been a long time for that, and it's been a long time since I saw the original version of The Getaway with Steve McQueen and Ally McGraw. And I've, again, been meaning to rewatch that one as well, and I get it confused with other movies from that time period starring Steve McQueen, so I can't really speak to that. But I have seen some of the movies that he wrote scripts for, like the Stanley Kubrick stuff that he's done, and some of those. Yeah.
The Killing is amazing.
Yes, and how much of that he wrote, I guess it's hard to say.
All of the dialogue.
Yeah, Kubrick took most of the credit for it.
But they gave him the credit for the dialogue.
Right. And that's sort of what you want. You want that, like, punchy...
Snappy. It's got to be snappy. Like, it's not here.
Yeah,
Why throw that out? I don't know.
That was the other big complaint of mine was, where's the snappy dialogue? And then I kind of got off that complaint in my own head, thinking, this sort of predates a lot of that stuff that was going to come after Reservoir Dogs, where it's all snappy dialogue, where it's all twists and turns, where, between Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction, you just get all this crime crap in the mid 90s. And it was kind of nice to think, okay, this was before all that, and it's not doing any of that. So I actually kind of appreciated that it was sort of low key and not in your face with the quips and the action and the twists and turns. But then at the end, I was kind of left like with a little bit of oh, okay, that was it. That was enjoyable for what it was.
I mean, my issue is I expect from noir quality dialogue. And if you don't put it in your film, why are you adapting this guy's story then?
Yeah, I think there's a couple lines from Pete where it sort of crept in. And since it was so little of the dialogue, that seemed out of place now. Like, okay, this could have been going. He at least could have been kind of doing that shtick this whole time as a old time. That guy is probably younger than I am now. In the movie, he's probably like 40 something or whatever.
Sure.
But, he could be the old timey guy that still kind of talks with that patter. And, but yeah, most of it's tossed out and it's just sort of everyday dialogue. You don't get that, gangster stuff in the mall and
you don't even get like smart dialogue. It's just like, it's very, I don't know. It's what's weird to me is adapting stories, novels by people who have a distinct, unique writing style like Jim Thompson does, and just going, I just want the story part of this. It's like, that's not what makes noir great. It's everything. It's the combination. It's the mix. It's the dialogue. It's the setting. It's the imagery. It's the subject matter. And when you only have some, but not all, like this film does, I think we could both agree, this film, even if it is dark as hell, which it is, it still has that noir, neo-noir feel to it. The actors are well cast in their, like, disgusting human being roles. But the dialogue just doesn't fit. It doesn't work. It doesn't back up and continue to reinforce the noir feel of the film. It actively works against the film trying to be successful.
Yeah, and I guess maybe that was a conscious choice to make it naturalistic, maybe, which would be interesting.
It's already naturalistic. Just look at the movie, right?
Right. And it would be interesting, though, to see that done in a successful way where you... And I was going to say, like, The Long Goodbye, but even The Long Goodbye retains so much of that, maybe not the quippy dialogue, but it still seems to nail the importance of the dialogue and the back and forth and snappy comebacks and stuff, even though it's set in, 1970s LA and you've got Goofy Elliott Gould as your Philip Marlowe. It still hits that noir feel. And so maybe that is the successful version of this, where you're going for naturalistic settings, you're going for naturalistic dialogue, you're going for naturalistic characters, all inside of a noir wrapping. But yeah, it's still missing that one kernel of noir that would have me saying, yes, this is most definitely a film.
It's right there. And look, I mean, I'm not saying that would imminently make this film amazing. Don't get me wrong. And I don't think you're saying that either. This film does have other issues, but it would have helped. That's for sure.
Yeah. And I think that would have, again, that and a nice clean picture, it could really lend to a different viewing of the film. The other thing that kept popping into my head, and a lot of this had to do with the music, was the early films of Jim Jarmusch, specifically Stranger Than Paradise. And I want to say, and I'm probably totally wrong, and I could help myself by looking it up right now, but I don't feel like doing that. I think that the first part of that might take place in New Jersey. I could be wrong. It could be just suburbs of New York, but it's got that same real vacant, rundown, abandoned look. Plus, the first thing I noticed about this movie, The Kill Off, was the music. And I was like, man, I have heard this before. And that rarely happens for me. I am not one of those people that can pick out film scores or their composers, just by hearing a couple notes. But at the beginning of the film, there's a lot of shots of the phone lines going through town. So, all these connections are being made. And of course, Luann's constantly on the phone spreading her gossip. And then the music, this real repetitive kind of jazzy music. And I was like, man, this sounds super familiar. So, of course, I looked it up, and it's Evan Lurie, who is the brother of John Lurie, who has worked a ton with Jim Jarmusch, and specifically Stranger Than Paradise and Down by Law, and done the scores for those. And they're in a band together called the Lounge Lizards. So
right.
I was like, I kind of surprised myself by picking up on that similarity in sounds. And so I was thinking Blood Simple and Stranger Than Paradise while I was watching the movie. And those are, indie darlings to the nth degree. And I think Stranger Than Paradise may have been made around the same time as that. I know that Blood Simple is from at least 5 years prior, but I that was a big thing for me in the early 90s, all those indie films. And I wonder how this would have played for me back then, seeing a lot of those kind of movies. Probably wouldn't have picked up any noir, but I may have appreciated it as a kind of little indie.
I was going to say, also, don't forget, this is the third Jim Thompson film that came out in 1 year. This is the third Jim Thompson film to come out in 1990 after The Grifters and after Dark My Sweet. So...
is The Grifters that old?
Yeah, from 1990.
Oh, okay. See, I was thinking it was like more, a product of the whole Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction thing. I thought it was a mid-90s.
Same year as this film.
I remember really liking The Grifters, so again, I need to go back and watch that after watching this and seeing if there's any kind of similarities here. I know that that's a lot more polished and a lot more snappy, and you get a lot of the twists and turns of a typical noir in that.
Right. Yeah, it's an interesting film. I don't think I'll revisit it unless there's a version of it that's better. And that's unfortunate. I think that is probably the most unfortunate aspect about this film is I don't really want to revisit it, not because I don't want to watch it, but because I don't want to have to put myself through watching this shitty version again. And it's no one's fault that it's a shitty version. This is literally the only option we have. So
yeah, I would definitely watch it again in a better transfer.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm 100% with you. I would watch a better version of this, a better copy. I mean, all it needs Kino Lorber somebody. I don't know why they haven't.
Yeah, I think it would be...
They find everything else. Jesus Christ, they did Transylvania 6-5000, and this isn't as important as that? Come on.
I think it would be a matter of finding a decent print, because you're not going to want it transferred off of the VHS, even the one that Cullen sent, which was by far... it was way better than the one that's on YouTube. Probably sourced from the same material, but the one on YouTube, I think, was presented in a really low, it's probably like 480p or less, or 240. So, sure. Cullen's version was definitely better. If you go back and try to watch the YouTube one, you'll see what I'm talking about. But, something that popped into my head while I was blabbing on about the music was the one other odd sound design thing that I found really funny as I was watching. And I don't know if you picked up on this or not, but when they're showing the phone lines, all those shots of the phone lines crossing the town, and that kind of repetitive saxophone is going, you can hear that little cartoony, somebody blabbing on the phone voice.
Is that what that is?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just making sure, because I was hearing it and I wasn't sure.
Yeah, they do it at the beginning and at the end, and probably a little bit lighter in the... And I'm thinking, okay, is this part of the score, or is this sound design? If it's part of the score, it almost makes a little bit more sense. Like, hey, yeah, she's always on the phone. Let's put in the cartoon blabby phone voice. And if it had been any more noticeable, it would have been laughable. It was just subtle enough to where it did make me chuckle, but I thought it was kind of brilliant too. very against, serious noir landscape that we're searching for here.
I am so glad that was not just me hearing things. Boy. I will say, though, that compared to the other Maggie Greenwald film that I've seen, the Disney Channel original film, Get a Clue.
Oh, my. Back to those. Huh?
Somehow Disney Channel films have followed us into this month.
Yeah, it looks like she's done mainly TV work, and I noticed that some of the few actors who have, continued to act have been in some of her TV shows. Right. The gal that plays the stripper was on Madam Secretary, and she's Maggie Greenwald has directed episodes of Madam Secretary. So that's kind of nice. She's getting people work that probably haven't worked in 30 years. Is it 30 years now? I'm going to get all messed up on is 1990 30 years ago?
31 years, yeah.
Just don't say it's 40 years, okay?
Yeah, that's fair. It's look, I think ultimately compared to the other two films that I've watched this month, I would definitely rather watch those over this one. But again, I'm not sure I can really give this film a complete fair shake visually just because of how terrible the transfer is. But outside of the terrible transfer, this is a decent noir film, but I also think it skirts noir.
Yeah, I agree. And I do think it's interesting enough that anybody who is, looking for something that is outside the typical noir or the ones that we all know and, are on TCM every weekend, it would be interesting, I think, to view in that light, even with just, the crappy version that's on YouTube. If you haven't seen it and you're getting into noir or you're really into noir and for some reason you haven't seen this, I would definitely suggest giving it a shot. And they may, someone who's way into noir might pick up more than you or I. I like noir films. It's sort of I probably watched more in the last 4 or 5 years than I had in the, I'm not going to say how many years prior to that, but it was a blind spot for a long time. I'm just sort of starting to get into it more. I'm curious as to what the two films that you watched previously were, since you've brought them up.
The two films that I watched prior were Try and Get Me or The Sound of Fury,
yes,
which features Lloyd Bridges.
Yeah, that's a good. I watched it a year ago and really enjoyed it.
Boy, it's shocking how prescient it ends up being, huh?
Yeah, I was like, oh, this is so interesting. And again, that's sort of one that I wouldn't necessarily call noir, but it's been over a year. I just remember it being sort of like more of a melodramatic crime movie. Maybe that's the definition.
It's a little bit of both.
I don't know.
And then the other one was La Noche Avanza, which is Night Falls, which is a Mexican noir film.
Very cool. That I will need to watch.
You should, because it's really good. And it has a main character who is completely, just one of the worst main characters you'll ever watch in a movie.
Cool.
You want to see him get his just desserts, his punishment. So, yeah. Unfortunately, this film suffers being compared to better films. But again, when you're doing a month of themed films, it's almost impossible not to compare them. At least, I'm not going to say, well, one is better than the other, so don't watch it at all. Just saying the other ones were better. This one suffers from that. So,
right.
There you go. What would you give the film out of 5, Mark?
I actually, since I do this, I rated it on Letterboxd as a 3.5. So of the movies, like I mentioned before we started recording, of the movies that I have done on your show, this is far and above the best one yet.
Yeah, I would give it a 3.5 as well. It's good. It's good, not great. Don't go into this movie expecting a lot, and you'll be entertained.
And I think it's probably good, and this could just be IMDb's idiocy. It shows that it's an hour and 50 minutes on there, and the two versions that I saw were an hour and 33 minutes, and I think that's plenty long. So if there's an hour and 50 minute version out there, skip that one and find the 90-minute version.
Not just plenty long, plenty long.
That would be that. I think I probably would have rated it differently, unless that 20 minutes was all the stuff that we said was missing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I don't need another 30 minutes of this movie. Spare me, please. Oh, boy.
I was going to, this is probably the fifth time I've said this, but I did enjoy it, and I would be happy to watch a cleaned up.
Me too. You know what? Let's avail ourselves. If another version comes out, you and I will sit down and do a follow-up to this. And so, that'll probably never happen. Or it'll get announced literally tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's either one of the two. It's not going to be both.
Yeah.
So if a better version comes out, we should just do a follow-up.
Yeah, I would be all for that. But it could be as simple as, it's not any better that it's all cleaned up, or it could lend to completely different discussion.
But I don't think that's ever going to happen.
Yeah, I'd be. It's funny though, because this is the kind of thing that does happen. Like for me, like, I finally tracked this movie down, and the next day it gets released,
or they announce it. Kino Lorber bringing you the kill off.
Yeah. So we're willing it into being right now by saying it's not going to happen.
Yeah, it will probably happen though. Knowing my luck, will happen. I say knowing my luck because I will just make more work for myself.
Well, we don't have to do a follow up right away if it comes out tomorrow.
That's fair. That's fair. If it came out tomorrow, I would somehow say, "I will into existence me winning the lottery."
Yeah.
But on that note, let's take a break and we will play a preview for the final Culture Cast of Noir February.
Lord, thank you for making me provident, for not putting obstacles in my way, such as women.
In New York City, somewhere above 125th Street, something big is going down.
There's gold in Harlem!
The squarest guy in town.
I'll have a milk, please.
The coolest guy around.
Give me your money! And don't think I wouldn't cut you, Reverend!
Have mercy, son.
And a very dangerous woman.
Excuse me, but do we know you?
Not in this lifetime.
Oh!
In one outrageous night, they're going to turn the town upside down and start a rage in Harlem.
My God! He made it!
Forrest Whitaker.
You a virgin, Jackson?
I don't know.
Gregory Hines.
You get the woman, I get the gold. Woman, gold.
Robin Givens.
Will you marry me?
Maybe we should just try this out, like, for the weekend, huh?
And Danny Glover.
I do believe you and I were cut out to do business together.
Yeah, baby.
A rage in Harlem. See it, or they'll shoot the dog.
Just don't let me see you shoot no dogs. That's where I draw the line.
That's right. On the final Culture Cast in Noir February, we're going to be talking about A Rage in Harlem. It is a film directed by Bill Duke, which is cool. Bill Duke's also in it. And it takes place in Harlem. And hopefully the version of that film is better than this one.
Bill Duke rules.
Hey, man. He eats Green Berets for breakfast.
And
is that what he says in Commando?
I don't know, but I love that movie. That's my favorite Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. So
that's your favorite Arnold movie?
Yep.
Over even Jingle All the Way?
Absolutely.
Jingle All the Way does have its moments, though.
Yeah, I know. It's seriously the one that I watched the most as a young feller. So I have a soft spot for it.
Was that down on the Begley farm there, pal? Hey there, fellas. Okay. I guess I didn't know about your cat milking days in Motown, but hey, you know what? I do love Commando. Commando has, while Commando may not be my favorite Arnold film, it is in my top 3 Arnold, and I think it's second best one-liners for Arnold.
Yeah.
I think, I will tell you my first one after we talk about it here for a second, but Commando has some fucking great one-liners.
Yeah. I think it's more nostalgia for me, but it's
a good movie. I did a podcast for the projection booth last year. It's a good movie. It's like it is a objectively and subjectively good film.
I was very happy for that episode, and I think I had either just been able to see it again for the first time in years or shortly thereafter, and I was so happy.
It is. I mean, from the scene with David Patrick Kelly to the scene with Bill Duke to the villain, whose the actor's name escapes me, playing the gayest villain in a film, in an action
Vernon
film.
Wells.
Vernon Wells, yeah, the gayest villain in an action film. Commando's great. I will say my favorite Arnold one-liner film is The Running Man.
Oh my God, they're so bad.
They're great. What are you talking about?
You need to insert one right here.
Which
Just
one?
plain whatever he says about
Sub-Zero.
Yeah.
Now, Plane Zero. My favorite one-liner in that entire movie is, "You better leave some room for my fist because I'm going to ram it into your stomach and break your goddamn spine." That's my favorite one-liner.
I don't think that's technically a one-liner, though. That's a run-on liner.
Fair, but Arnold Schwarzenegger is the only actor who could make that into a one-liner and get away with it. Like, it's not like a pithy Pierce Brosnan, like, stick around or, cool off. It's, like Arnold just being like, like that noise, but with actual words attached to it. Oh, boy. Someday we'll do Arnold movies. I think we've already done them. I don't remember. That's what happens when you're a podcaster for 7 years.
Yeah.
You just start forgetting shit. Yeah, I can't do Commando now because we already did it on Mike's podcast. And like, what else do you do? Like, Jingle All the Way? What is there to say? It's a good movie.
I tried to get my family to watch that during Christmas time, but nobody took me up on it.
Why not? It's so good. It's so good. I mean, it's terrible, but it is hilarious. Like, Arnold has no comedic timing whatsoever, and whoever thought he did deserves to be fired.
I don't know. They poo-pooed me every time, though.
And Sinbad? Why is Sinbad in that movie? What is Sinbad up to right now? That's the real. He needs a website like Abe Vigoda used to have, where it's like, is Sinbad still alive?
Oh, Abe.
Well, I mean, they had one for Abe Vigoda.
Good old Abe.
Yeah, he's dead now. But anyway, so speaking of Abe Vigoda, on the final podcast for Noir February, we will be joined, or I will be joined, by our good friend Mr. Mike White, of the Barney Miller podcast and the Projection Booth, obviously, the more important one. Until then, Mark, where can people find you?
People can find me on Twitter at Wake Up Heavy. Same on Instagram, same on Facebook if you are still trotting through that hellhole, as I am. WakeUpHeavy.com, I probably already said that. And all the regular podcast platforms, I suppose. I think they snatch up your RSS feed whether you like it or not. So look for me where you listen to podcasts.
Yeah, they just take your RSS feed without asking.
That's fine.
Yeah, isn't it? It sure
Whatever.
is. I agree. Don't make me work. You do it for me. And as for me, you can find me on Twitter at Christmas Claus. I'm just leaving it at this point. I don't give a shit. Culturecast.com, patreon.com/culturecast if you want to, I don't know, about, things. If you want to hear me talk about a thing you want to hear me talk about, patreon.com/culturecast is where you could go to do that. So if you want to do it, go do it. $50 and you can program the entire month. The entire month of August this year is going to be us talking about films that someone else that is not a podcaster wants me to talk about. And they didn't take it upon themselves to completely crater the month. And that in and of itself feels like a success.
I don't think I'll be showing up for August shows, so don't even ask.
Get out of here. Get out of here.
They'll probably be great choices.
Oh, they are. They're great. They are great choices.
Oh, cool.
They are very good choices.
Good.
I won't tell anyone but you what they are, and I'll tell you what they are as soon as we're done recording. So let's get to that point. If you want to find me, Twitter, everything else is gravy. Catch us on the next episode.